Just gonna be a little difficult here with the Facebook. But yeah, man, I've been I've been having a lot of conversations lately. You know, an extreme amount, to be honest with you, in regards to various levels of traumas that I've seen exhibited in people. And one of the things that is seems to be very common amongst people is that we're okay. We're okay with accepting certain people and the problems that they have. And one of the reasons why, you know, we are so okay with this issue is because it's normalized. It's really a normalized thing. And due to the level and degree of which it's normalized, it's like you be in a relationship with somebody and it doesn't necessarily have to be this person who is like you're in this intimate relationship. It could be a regular relationship. But the point is you're in a relationship with somebody who you guys have a real strong connection to each other, right? But the connection itself is just based on the pain that's here. And I've seen so many people go through these things in relationships and, literally out here trying to make it work, out here trying to make things work with somebody who is definitely not in a position to make it work. So that's what we're talking about. It's going to be a quick class, and I appreciate you guys coming through as usual. I'm always talking about this stuff. You can always hit me at hardonbreak.com. I do one-on-one coaching. You know, if you got any love to show for me tonight for this class, hit my Cash App. I am NAKADA. Appreciate you guys as usual. Now, one of the biggest things that I think is like a relationship make or break is that feeling that everybody wants to feel. It's like this love feeling, you know, and the trauma bonding effect actually does feel like love. But what people don't understand is that these traumatic experiences that we have, it's like soldiers in a freaking army battalion going through the same things together. Like in reality, you guys don't want to be at war and you're more supportive of each other because you guys are all you have, but you don't want to be at war. And the truth is a lot of people are stuck in traumatic relationships that they consider to be love, but it ain't love and it's never going to be love. And a lot of people, they're just kind of sort of in this position in their life where this is all they know. This is all they know. This is all they're accepting. This is all they've learned. They've seen it in relationships, in their families' relationships, and they don't know how to avoid it. And they stick together for a lot of different reasons. So now, like I said, it's not always this intimate relationships, because you'll find that some of these things here that you see here, trauma bonding versus authentic love, you'll find family, friends, close associates or whatever who behave with a traumatic bond. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be the intimate relationships, but the truth is you see them faster. You learn how to recognize them faster in the relationships or the intimate relationships. But it takes time to understand that you had a trauma bond with your brother or with the dude down the street who was going through the same things as you, or the little young lady or whatever the case is. But it's very clear. But since most people don't understand the difference, then it's easy to think that just because she feels like she needs you. I remember when I was in one of these trauma bonding situations where, she used to always tell me how much she's addicted to me. And then, like it was flattering when you're stupid and you're young, but the real truth is she was addicted to the things that we did and the feeling that's associated with doing the things that we did. And I heard that a lot, and it made you feel good. But the truth is, this is a toxic situation. And sometimes that feeling of being needed, or, let's say if it's a sexual situation, that intense feeling that you're getting from the sexual situation, it turns up to be something that literally like, you feel like you need it, and then like the highs and the lows. Oh my gosh. Like this is one where when I was in my early 20s or mid 20s, I never understood like the difference between the highs and lows. And by the time I had two children and had to experience these nervous reactions from women that I'm like, yo, like you you just were totally okay yesterday. Like you literally seemed like you were cool. And now today, like it's just the highs and lows. For me personally, when I went through that, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. The way that it made me feel, like the nervousness that I began to feel because of these highs and lows, these uncertainties that I was going through with this person from day to day. And I was like, damn, like, how am I supposed to feel? I'm not sure how I'm supposed to be. I'm not sure if like I should stay or I should leave, because you never know what you're going to expect. And then, a lot of these highs and lows come with, triggers that these people have. And the third one is emotionally phobic, but highly sexual. Guys, these women will have all the problems in the world that you can possibly think of and still be out here having crazy, wild sex with you. Listen, man, you got to learn to understand that not because you're having sex with her, not because she's giving you the green light, it does not mean that she's actually healthy enough emotionally to even be sexual. And I find that this is also the issue for a lot of men. A lot of us who have that trauma as well too. You went through some certain things, you got initiated into sexual activities at an early age or something, so your trauma always involves some kind of sexual addiction. So, and the fourth one, enables behavior that is harmful, deceitful, or abusive to receive love. Like when you don't understand the highs and the lows, when you don't understand that certain people are behaving in a particular manner, when you think that you're just trying to cope with them, you end up enabling the behavior, and it's almost like enabling narcissism. As a matter of fact, in many cases, the traumatic bonds have some real narcissistic tendencies in them. If you just pay attention, you will see it. But one of the biggest mistakes I myself has made in situations like that is just this idea that I think that somehow, some way, well, she's hurt and she's been through a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I'll let that slide. And then all it becomes is sliding. All you're doing is literally sliding with this person. Nothing is really happening. You're not really speaking your truth. You're allowing them to get over you in a certain kind of way. It's almost like they're not giving you 100, right? These people are not giving you 100. That they're slick and doing things on the slick. This, but since you really can't prove it like that, or you didn't catch it the first time, it just eases you a little bit for you to just say, I'll let it slide. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, last one, partners' attempts to mold and or control each other. I mean, when you're a high value man, a woman should know that she can't. But with men being so stupid, a woman is going to actually try. Many people will try. And I'm not saying every woman, a good, healthy woman is not going to try to control you or mold you. And that's what we find a lot these days. The traumatic women seek traumatic men who they're trying to heal and or control with the healing that she's supposedly bringing to him. But it's really a control mechanism. Buying you Jordans, buying you clothes, buying you video games, buying you the things that you want is another part of the trauma bonding experience. And, the attempt and to control is going to be strong from these people. Now, switch over to the other side and let's talk about authentic love. Authentic love from the perspective of this is more so what you're looking for. This is what you want. This is what you would ideally, search for in any particular relationship. You want authentic love, but of course, authentic love, it speaks differently. And when it speaks to you, sometimes a lot of us don't understand when somebody's seeing you for the first time. And when you do get it, after being through these traumatic experiences, let's say you're going from somebody who tells you that they need you or they can't do without you, or they got to see you all the time, this addictive kind of thing, to somebody who sees you and sees what you do, takes time to observe you, takes time to listen to you. It's a different voice. And don't get it twisted now. Some of the traumatic people can say and give you and mix trauma and authentic love together and give you some of that being seen or being heard that perhaps you've been looking for your whole life and never quite got. You get what I'm saying? But the bottom line is that there are a lot of check marks that need to go off for you to understand when you're entering into any kind of authentic love situation. It looks different, it feels different, and it does not necessarily mean that there won't be any trauma involved, because authentic love doesn't mean that the person themselves is so is so good or so great that they don't have any trauma. It doesn't mean that. It means that with whatever you are given in the particular situation that you got going on, you can be heard, you can be seen, there's mutual trust, you can understand or predict what they do, words align with actions. That's a big one, because like in many cases, a lot of us men, we're accustomed to being the only ones whose words must align with their actions. And it's kind of crazy, because like, that's not just accountability is not only reserved for men. However, men are the ones who benefit more so from being accountable, because when we're accountable, we get everybody who's like, oh, he's responsible, he's this, that, and that. Oh, yeah, at least he can. People love that. But you ain't gonna find no accountability in the trauma bonds. Emotionally vulnerable and open to communication. Come on, man. Like, that's why, and this is another one too, that in many cases, sometimes people are emotionally vulnerable to the certain level, right? So let's say her closet is pretty deep, but she just lets you into the first few rows of what's going on in there. And that feels like emotional vulnerability, and it feels like open communication. So you really have to understand the level, because being emotionally or seeming emotionally vulnerable can just be her telling you something about some good things and sharing stories with you, and it feels good, and open communication there. But to actually do this in an authentic situation requires for you to dig a little bit deeper. And, but it's a good sign when you see vulnerability and willingness to be vulnerable. Like, she's not fronting, she's not going hard, she's not protecting herself, she's not doing all of these different things. She's open. And this is a whole different feeling. Has clear boundaries, free of self-betrayal, values, and accountability. That's what I was saying before. Like, listen, man, when you find a woman that can line up like this, you're winning. You're absolutely winning, and you absolutely will continue to win if you choose properly. But the truth is, self-betrayal is the biggest enemy. When you start seeing her turning against herself, doubting herself, thinking that she's not good enough, listen, you could perhaps say, hey, baby, don't be like that. Don't be so hard. Or you could realize that, damn, how long you been feeling like this? Like, you probably been feeling like this for a long time. Um, what am I going to do? Like, am I even in a position to help you here? How many men have told you that you're pretty already? You get what I'm saying? How many men have told you that you're pretty? Like, what am I doing differently? Because you still feel this way. You still have a little bit of self betrayal, and clear boundaries is very, very important. And men, a lot of times, we don't set boundaries, but women are so okay with setting boundaries. When you start setting some boundaries, it's going to be easy to see when these women step across it. And when they step across it, it's not cute. It's not always cute. It's not always the situation where, oh, she just really likes me a lot. That's what I used to think. Oh, she just a little clingy. Nah, she might be fucking crazy, bro. Like, you didn't set any boundaries. You didn't set any boundaries. They could, because perhaps you didn't know to set boundaries. And then listen, this last part is the partners do inner work and to hold space and grow and evolve. Listen, when you can get to that level, that's deep. But what you really want is somebody who's probably been doing this inner work before. It's a beautiful thing to do it together. And I often talk about this, you know what I'm saying? And see and notice that, you want if you've been doing the inner work, if you've been trying to evolve, if you've been trying to grow, Why in the hell would you not want somebody that's done that? I made a post on Facebook today that was talking about celibacy, and my when I was celibate, I was just like, listen, I don't want to have sex with somebody who just had sex with somebody recently. You get what I'm saying? And so now I wanted to put this up here because the truth is, trauma is not always the chick that's crying. Sometimes it's this chick. This is this one with the beautiful clothes on, the tight skin, like very revealing, you know, somewhat exotic. She does a little bit extra. She looks really good and really stimulating to our over sexual senses. That's really what it is, you know. So she's stimulating the over sexual senses, and she's really hard to resist. She really is. Looking like this, you may not be the one that gets to sleep with her, but when you see her, right, there's something that this look exudes confidence, you know. And a lot of us, we go for these women, looking like this because we're so like we're up here, not up here in our heads. No, we're not up here, we're down there in our pants. We're looking at this from a sexual position, and then you think to yourself, what do I need to do in order to get this woman, keep this woman? And for the most part, it's quite simple, guys. It's usually the women who have a lot going on that look like that you don't know until what? Until this, until there's a small issue, until something that you didn't expect to be a problem becomes a problem. You know what I'm saying? And now the small issues turn into huge things. And what do you get? Defensive reaction. It's coming from somewhere. Now, here's the thing. She's fine, right? She's beautiful. You like looking at her, and since she probably got sexual with you within a short period of time, you know, you got some bonds there. But the truth is, something comes up and you don't know where it's coming from. Most of the time, it's coming from a defensive reaction from childhood. We don't know this. Oh, and then when you're talking about young women, let's say 21 to 28 or 30 years old, listen, man, childhood wasn't that long ago. Childhood reason, and a lot of them ain't that mentally, spiritually mature, especially if they've been bumping along on the logs of these little weak, sympathetic dudes who would do anything for them. And you know, they get a lot of these guys. So now the defensive reaction now becomes the big part of the relationship. And what are you doing sometimes? You're over here trying to calm her defense, and then boom, she went from video vixen or whatever the case is to this. And you're wondering, what the fuck? How, Sway? Like, how did we go from this, where I met you and you were all excited and you couldn't stop smiling at this woman? You get what I'm saying? You looking at what she's got on, and you know she's beautiful, and all these different things, right? All these different things are happening, and what do? You hardly understand the nature of what's going on with the person. So you in some cases you try to be the hero, you know. And a lot of times, right, the hero, you know, what does the hero get? You know what I'm saying? The hero himself hardly understands the connection to trauma, because no matter what, you know, the hero is looking at being, you know, the savior or the person that she looks up to, and you know, you can help her. But a lot of the times the hero himself doesn't understand where she's coming from. Did you know if her father was missing, or if she grew up in an argumentative house? You know what I'm saying? Do you know, can you line it up with you? Like, does she have mommy issues just like you do? Does she have a missing father just like you do? You don't know this stuff sometimes when they're dressed this beautifully, when they look like these vixens, when they, you know what I'm saying, when they appear like they're perfectly okay on these dates that you're going on with them. You get what I'm saying? It's that kind of issue that we really have to learn as men how to, like, literally, you know, you got to literally put yourself in a position where, hey, you are going through the proper protocols with someone to really understand where they come from, to really understand what they've been through. You know, because if you don't understand the level of the trauma that they have, bro, like, you know, if it's not akin unto yours, nothing, come on, man, you're in for a ride that you may not ever be able to get off. It's because this is the thing, sometimes it's too late. when you've had children with it, with the woman, you know? So signs of being in a trauma bond with someone, you feel protective about the person because of their difficult past or childhood and find yourself caring for them despite their abusive behavior. Man, I've seen this, and honestly, you know, it's that's that hero stuff. You see that she's jacked up. You see that she got issues. And sometimes when you try to play the hero got issues too. You understand? And so some of these difficult the past and all the things that she's been through with men, brother, it's not gonna stop you, the hero, especially if you're a hero. Because if you're not the hero, you're using logics. You know what I'm saying? If you're using logic, you're gonna think to yourself, damn, well, how's this gonna affect our relationship? Or if you've been in enough relationships, you can cross-reference and be like, yeah, you know, so-and-so also had this little issue and it was pretty terrible. But a lot of dudes are just trying to cape for women who have issues and they can't help them. So you're being protected, you're protecting her, which is basically you enabling her, you know. And then here's another one, you know, you're being manipulated, but you're often in denial and block out or quickly forget the bad things. That happens a lot. I know I've been there. I know that I've been there in that particular situation where it's easy to forget the things that the you know the women are doing because guess what? You know, I have a child with her and you know what I'm saying it's cheaper to keep her and this, that, and that. The relationship is intense and inconsistent. Like these are all signs that you got to pay attention to. You know, sometimes you don't, you know, this is why you got to court properly. This is why I always talk about this. If you're not courting properly, if you're not learning how to recognize these different things when you're just cheesing in her face, when you're just smiling and when it's just the first, second, and third date, listen, man, after you start sleeping with somebody, it's the wrong time to be finally recognizing that damn this is intense and it's inconsistent, you know, like you do everything to please them and are unconditionally loyal, why you get nothing but heartbreak in return? Sometimes, you know, you've got to understand how traumatic that person could be, especially if you're sitting there being loyal and trying to please this person and doing things consistently in harmony with what this person wants. But what do you get? One traumatic experience like literally passed down to you after another one. They say things like you want to hear you want to hear to resolve issues temporarily. I've learned my lesson. I will prove my love for you every day. Life is impossible without you. Oh gosh. Woo. They'll tell you whatever they need to get you where they want you. This is like a big trauma bonding sign. You know, this is a big trauma bonding sign and you got to pay attention to it. And you yourself got to understand that if you are in this situation, you're making these promises and you're over here trying to prove to somebody something that you might be in a little, you know, a little catch 22 situation with this person, you know. And here's the thing, you are driven to the point of self-destruction, often harbor thoughts of self-harm. You know, I do a lot of coaching and, you know, hold on one second, y'all. So, you know, we just really got to understand traumatic bonding occurs as a result of ongoing cycles of abuse in which the intermittent reinforcement of reward and punishment creates powerful emotional bonds that are resistant to change. Like it's trauma bonding, man. If you smashed in the first week, no matter if y'all ain't married, it's trauma bonding. You know, like if she likes guys like you and you ain't so good, it's trauma bonded. And then it's also to a certain level PTSD. Like, you know, we've got to understand, and this is one of the things that I like to really reinforce every now and then. Like women have been through hell in these last 50 to 60 years, especially since feminism has come out with the empowerment movement to empower them. Like being empowered by the virtue of just having a good job or having quote unquote opportunities is not really empowerment, because most of these jobs are slave wage anyways. But the point is, women are stressed the F out. and it's obvious. Like there's no question about it. They've been through a lot. Men have been designed to be to dysfunction. So what we often end up doing is dysfunctioning on the women that we're in relationships with. You know, so like common PTS syndromes that you got to learn to pay attention along the way. This is dating time. This is before you put your lips anywhere on her. Do you understand what I'm saying? These are the things you got to kind of sort of zone in on, even if you don't use this terminology, trauma bonding, PTSD, Stockholm syndrome, and all these different things. These are issues that not just she's facing because she's a woman, you're facing them too. You're stuck in between two places and not pretty sure about yourself to a certain degree, because when you have a lot of people who have trauma, and there's a difference between healed trauma and unresolved unhealed trauma. There's just a huge freaking difference in that. So you kind of got to understand that, you know, somebody who has been through some experiences, been through some traumatic experiences, doesn't necessarily mean that they're still sitting in that. But when, you know, the PTSD syndrome symptoms start showing, you got to understand and recognize that you're possibly dealing with somebody that you may not be in any capable position of dealing with or healing. You know, intrusive thoughts or flashbacks related to the trauma, which causes anxiety and distress as the person loses sense of reality. Often the person feel like he's experiencing the trauma again. Listen, man, anybody who's been in some really seriously fucked up relationships can attest to when somebody, especially speaking as a man, you know, she has this flashback of, let's say you cheated on her, right? And y'all are still together. And then she has these flashbacks of when you cheated on her, and it gets her so angry that she's literally in that moment, even though it was 5 years ago or 10. You understand what I'm saying? Like this is a byproduct of a lot of the shit that she's already had to go through. The world is freaking stressful for her, you know. And then she's under this illusion of how you're supposed to treat her, which only adds to her stress. And the illusion itself is just some marketed stuff. It's not no reality. But guess what? In those moments, she's seriously afflicted. She's seriously going through it. She's seriously suffering. And that's when you got to understand that the pressure of what some people have had to go through literally renders them into the position where, hey, man, as nice as she is, as good as her job is, as okay as she looks, hey, man, she got some real serious issues. Real serious issues. Reoccurring nightmare, which may give rise to insomnia, emotional numbness arising from freeze response associated with the trauma. Emotional numbness could be when she's doing something, you know, that is not pleasing to you or even to herself, and just literally just go cold on you, just disappear on you, don't feel on you. Listen, man, many of us have been in a situation where, let's say you owe somebody some money, you know, and the moment has come and you don't have an excuse and you don't have the money, and what do? Like, you try to ignore the situation. You try to get away from it somehow, some way. Freezing up, difficulty concentrating on tasks due to exhaustion from managing trauma symptoms. Listen, man, this is a big one. This is a big one, because let's say, for example, you're dealing with a young lady and she works a little job or whatever the case is, right? And you guys link up after work, and you know, every time you link up with her, she's always sleeping. She's always tired, you know, and you're like, damn, what the hell are you really doing? Like, I thought you worked at a desk for most of the day, you know, like she's not focused on work so much. She's focused on what she's going through emotionally. And a lot of guys, we just don't understand that. And I'm definitely going to throw in the definition of cognitive dissonance here, because, you know, a lot of people also, you know, pretty much associate this terminology with how people are treated, let's say in regards to race, and, you know, the dehumanization of people when somebody is trying to make you one way when you know you're not, or you feel like you're not, but you're stuck in between behaving a particular way, being loyal essentially to someone, or something that is not loyal to you, or perhaps even something that destroys you. You know, and you know, like this inability to see how destructive it is, but almost in a, you know, sedated kind of way, you're still going along. And listen, man, It ain't got to be in regards to relationship. It could be what happened to you. Like, the real truth is, a lot of people are dealing with these internal conflicts on a daily basis, all the time, all the time, all the time. And so what are you left with? What are you left with most of the time? You're left with a situation where, listen, man, this person is not healthy. You're always in a conflict. You're always having to bond together after warring with each other. You know what I'm saying? By the way, y'all, go ahead and hit that Cash App, show some support. I am NAKADA, cash sign. I am NAKADA. If you're appreciating the information, definitely trying to give the guys some more to work with, because if you're not understanding that what you're experiencing is trauma and you normalize it, let's say the relationship ends amicably or whatever the case is. If you normalize that level of trauma, guess what, bro? The next one is going to be just like her, maybe a different variation, but she's going to be very similar. It's going to be very similar patterns in all your relationships. And the patterns are going to lead back to you as well. You could be the one up there doing some real patternistic things that you yourself haven't even recognized. Trauma bonding is when you're so heavily attracted to a toxic person that you're willing to maintain a relationship, even at the expense of yourself, for a few and far between highs, mostly lows. The loss of the love makes you crave them more. You're dependent in the same way a heroin addict is. Listen, I've seen people in these situations before, especially if you've got this sexually addictive bond to a toxic person. Now you associate the sex that you have with this person almost entirely to the connection that you have. Without the sex, eventually the relationship erodes, but the sex is like the combustible fuel that makes it go poosh. And then when it goes poosh, those highs are usually sexual and the lows are the relationship itself, the actual dealing with this person that you chose, the actual problem solving, working with them financially, all the different things that you have to deal with in a regular relationship. It becomes the low because you guys don't know how to deal with each other. And so, like, in essence, like, this is a short class, guys, but I wanted to run it from the perspective that a lot of us men, for the most part, we think that trauma is always going to be like some abusive, dramatic kind of thing. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just the thing that you thought that doesn't bother her. You just don't understand the mechanics of how it's traumatizing to that person. And one of the biggest things that I think is that a lot of men who are dealing with, women who are products of single parent household, didn't have fathers, you think that just because her mother did good or they lived in a nice little neighborhood or whatever the case is, that she didn't suffer from the effects of not having a father. You don't understand it, perhaps, if you yourself suffer from the effects of not having a father and are normalizing it just like she is. So now you don't get to see or understand the differences with this person, or even recognize the dysfunctions that you guys are bonding over. It's crazy. You never get to move towards healing if you're not able to recognize what dysfunction looks like. And if you're also defending another person's dysfunction. Why? Because you got the same dysfunction. You have the same dysfunction as her. And you kind of shamefully want to admit it. You want to make it seem as if perhaps you're in a better situation than she is, but you're not. And that's why when you start looking at it, when you start learning these different things and doing things like, like this says right here, moving towards healing trauma bonds, learning to protect yourself and having boundaries. I remember in my early days, the women, once they feel like you're supposed to be with them and all these different things, sometimes the boundaries get crossed often. I have a friend who told me a situation about a young lady. She was like friendly or whatever the case is, hanging out at their place, and she would get overburdened and they'd tell her to leave, and she'll come back at the night and sneak around their house and just try to mess with them when they told her, don't come back right now. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've heard crazy stories of how us men who think that it's, we don't set any boundaries, and the boundaries that you have that you didn't set, they get walked all over. And learning to self-soothe is a big one. is a big one. As a matter of fact, I think this is a masculine trait, because your ability to self-soothe is going to lead to you owning up for whatever it is that you have, and not needing somebody else to make you feel better about your issues. Because at the end of the day, man, if you experience these traumas on your own, and it had nothing to do with her, your ability to deal with it on your own is going to be key to being able to have a functional relationship with her. You know, you got to also lower your tolerance for chaos in relationships and friendships. I think this is a big one. I think this is huge. You're not going to really move out of traumatic situations, especially explosive traumatic situations where things go wrong. And when they go wrong, they get ugly, which is most traumatic situations, right? But your ability to say, listen, man, like, you don't talk to me like that. You being able to shut things down when they start getting real frenetic and crazy, learning to understand how to listen. I'm about to, like, literally walk out on you. Okay, it's time to hang up. Okay, it's time to, call them people and let them know that you can't be over here anymore. You can't swing by my house anymore. Like, you can't do this. I'm not going to allow for you to go to these extreme highs and then swing me back to these extreme lows. That's going to stress you out. That's going to add to PTSD. Developing an awareness of your inherited beliefs around love and relationships. A lot of us have inherited beliefs that are naturally just low vibrational beliefs. You've got to set different ones. More awareness means that you now know that this person who believes this in particular don't vibe with me. If that's how you think, my lady, you look good and you look great, and maybe there's some things that we can connect on, but you believe this, you act like this, like, just like how some people are like, oh, if you're going to vote for Trump, I'm not going to talk to you, or you're going to vote for this, or you're going to do, is it fair? Perhaps not. But you have to understand that, hey, or know in particular what inherited beliefs around relationships and love in particular that you don't want. I don't want to be in this situation with you if you think that I'm supposed to do this, and that's not how I grew up. That's not even what I want to do, or whatever the case is. Draw those lines early because you don't have to be stuck with somebody. You're looking for somebody who believes what you believe, or close enough for the ideas to merge. Another one is detaching others' emotional limitations and actions as a reflection of your own worth. Listen, man, this is major, guys. A lot of us stay in these traumatic relationships simply because the other person's, their emotional perception of you is terrible. I remember, like, somebody who's like, oh, you hurt me. And she kept on saying, you hurt me for years. And I'm just like, how I hurt you? Like, and then she was like, oh, you need to prove this to me, or you need to show me this. She was always trying to get me to show her something, to prove her something, to do an extra step, to show her that I am a good person. You have to show me that you're a good person. Fuck you mean show you I'm a good person? Why are you here? Why are you here? You're fucking here because I am a good person. What the fuck is going on? What are you doing? A lot of guys, they don't draw that line, and they don't understand that, listen, her perception of you should not make or break your own self-worth. You are this before and without her. You have to understand who you are. So this goes into more mechanics of knowing yourself. And then that's a big one. I don't even recommend relationships without a proper understanding of self and purpose. But at the same time, listen, we all got thrown out there 13, 14, 15, you know what I'm saying? Started looking at stuff that we weren't supposed to be, started being influenced by what? The culture of relationships. So it's hard. I get it. Bonding over shared values is big. When I met my most recent, my partner, one of the things that I noticed that we bonded over was the shared values that we have. I was like, yo, if she thinks like this about these things, and I'm an open communicator to the point where I lay it out very early. So if I find somebody who shares the big values of me that I have, it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. That's where progress grows. Spending time to get to know yourself, wants, needs, and your own red flags and limitations. This is knowing yourself. This knowing yourself is always going to be the biggest, most important component of this. And then also moving slowly in intimate relationships. Listen, this is the biggest thing that I preach about for the most part, because the facts are, you move too fast, you're not going to find out what's wrong until what's wrong is already causing you problems. Everything boils down to how well you know yourself, and not how well you know yourself from a position of merely relationships, but knowing yourself, like what you're destined to do. You know, I had a relationship with a young lady a few years back, and I was traveling in and out of the country, and I would take her with me. And it was obvious that when we got to this particular place that she just didn't fit in. It was just like visually obvious. And you know, I think in the beginning she thought, yeah, I could do this, I could do this. And then she, after being in it and being around these different people who are different culturally, and just being here, let's say a couple weeks or a couple months or whatever we were doing at that time, like it didn't mesh. And then I realized that, hey, I need somebody who meshes with this lifestyle that I'm going through. I need somebody who, you know, who vibes with what I want. It's like being, you know, when you're a homebody type of guy, right? Versus someone who goes out all the time. You know, you need to know that if you're a homebody, right? The other person doesn't necessarily need to be a homebody, but she has to be able to tolerate you when you are really into yourself, when you are in, when you really don't want to go anywhere, when, but and she does, you know, because at the same time you're going to have to be able to tolerate her too when you really don't want to go somewhere and she does, and you actually go and do it. These are the scales of relationships. You know, you got it, but you have to know yourself well enough to understand who bonds with you. And as usual, guys, you know, I'm gonna cut this one short today, but you know, and give some of y'all the opportunity to talk and talk about some of these situations that we've been in. You know, for me, everything really does boil down to knowing yourself and really understanding your own trauma first. Because here's the thing: when I got into relationships, I didn't understand trauma. I didn't understand why I was looking for this person. I didn't understand what I was seeking, because sometimes the attraction or the bond, it's physical, it's chemical, it has all these different things loaded, and it's also trauma as well, meaning similarities. But other times the bond itself now is only there to let you know about your own trauma, but you're not seeing it as trauma, so you don't even know that it's trauma. So, you know, like, you got to know how what you've been through affects you. There's a lot of people who are 30 and 45 years old that who are still suffering the effects of getting their ass beat too hard by their parents. Come on, how did that affect you? And a lot of us are, you know, we like to pretend that our trauma doesn't hurt. Know yourself, man. Understand your trauma. Know what you can deal with versus what you have no understanding of. If you listen to me often, you hear me talk about this. Listen, when I went into certain relationships, I didn't understand. Let's say the first time, you know, I was about 28, 7 or so, what, or 8, when I first had a relationship with someone who never had like a father. Now, I've probably had some casual sex with a lot of them along the way, but around, you know, my mid-20s, I start putting away the casual sex thing. And I first got into a relationship with somebody who didn't have a father. It blew my freaking mind. It blew my freaking mind, because me growing up with my father around, me being 30 something years old, and this dude still calling me almost every day and wants to hear from me more, like listening to all the different components that goes into this reality. She had none of it. She couldn't relate to it. Like, there were certain things you'd be like, well, where do you like, what kind of, and then you'd be like, no, she doesn't, because she never had this experience. You know, you got to know what you can deal with versus what you don't understand. So let's say, even in this particular case, right? Let's say you both come, you come from a two-parent household, And she comes from a one-parent household where she grew up with her mother. But let's say her mother and her had a bad relationship. And let's say in your two-parent household, you got along better with your dad and your mom. So there could be some bonding or some understanding that goes into, okay, our moms and something is similar. But for the most part, the culture sometimes clashes, and you've got to really understand what you understand, so meaning understand what you can tolerate. Like, if a woman has been beaten by multiple men or something like that, and you've never done any of that, and let's say your father never laid hands on your mother or anything like that, it's kind of hard sometimes to understand where she's coming from. So you got to know whether you can deal with that shit. You get what I'm saying? You got to also understand, if is your need for this other person fueled by sexual trauma. Listen, a lot of us guys are hiding the fact that the first time you got initiated into sex was by some older girls. You get what I'm saying? Was female induced. Somebody took you and showed you something, and in the world they tell us to glorify these things. I remember when I was, I wasn't that young, but like, I remember freshman year in college, just in my homeroom class or whatever, there's this chick, she was like a junior or a senior. And I don't know, I used to just mess with her. And I mess with her so much that she'll just allow me to just touch on her a lot. And I'll be in homeroom class just touching on her and all kind of stuff. And she loved that. And she was like literally way older than me. And every day in class, she just she had her jacket over. I just slide my hand underneath, and listen, that's what she wanted. I was a young buck. I was 14 years old. You understand what I'm saying? She was directing this. It was in school. I guess it's not that traumatizing or whatever. It's not traumatizing at all. But when it happens the other way, when it happens at home, when it happens in the neighborhood, when it happens when the girls jump on top of you or whatever the case is as a male and initiate you into some shit, you got to understand that, hey, me being this sexual is unhealthy. It started at a bad place. It really did. And now, I'm over sexual, and I enjoy being over sexual because this is a part of my trauma, and I connect better sexually. See, that's a lot of heat that a lot of people are carrying and not even considering this drama. They just think that, oh, I'm just like this naturally. Nah. You were 13, 12 or something like that. You got thrown in that water and you had to learn how to swim. And you had to learn how to enjoy it, because what are you going to do? Complain and say these girls did this to you? Some older dudes are going to be like, oh, you should enjoy that, blah, start making fun of you and stuff like that, because you're supposed to enjoy it or you're supposed to know what to do. A lot of men are hiding sexual trauma until they get in these relationships with these traumatic and traumatized women, and now you're bonding over sex, and she's the one with the issue. Nah, bro, you got issues too. Let's be real. Admit it. And, another thing is to notice the similarities in trauma. I'm not saying that, all similarities of trauma means that it's an unhealthy relationship, but you got to understand if it's opposite or if it's similar. Can you deal with it? Like, and if it's opposite, that means that perhaps you're here to bring a level of healing. If it's similar, perhaps they're there to bring a level of hearing or compassion that perhaps you've never had. But you got to understand that it's trauma fuel. It's not love fuel. And when you see the connection between your trauma and hers or theirs, if you're talking about other people, you got to learn that sometimes what you grew up doing or how your way of doing things was just a toxic or traumatic experience. Like, like just like the parent who says, oh, I beat my kids because I got beaten. No, it's you being toxic and you passing down that same level of toxicity that was passed down to you. Like, and that goes for men and how they view women in the sexual conquest. It goes for women and how many men they sleep with, or how many partners they have, whatever. The connection and the thing that says that this is how I do it, could be some real toxic stuff that you've been defending, and could be the reason why shit doesn't work for you. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, you yourself, you just have to know your healing points and how it transitions with age. Because the truth is, you know, how you feel about your trauma at 25, trust me, when you get to 35, it's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different way of viewing it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but with age and experience, with knowledge and wisdom, things change. And perhaps the lessons that you couldn't get from it in the early days, you can get it as you mature and as you get older. So you got to know your healing points and how you have to get over things. I love when I do my coaching work with people and they tell me that they're already getting counseling. Spoke to a guy, he was only 29 years old, and he was telling me literally that, you know, he understands that he has trauma, and he was in a relationship trying to bring, you know, this kind of counseling, therapeutic kind of thing to the relationship. And it's still not going to work if that person is not ready. You know, so, you know, you being able to understand your trauma, self-soothe, find healing for yourself is going to help you avoid these traumatic situations with these people, you know. And, you know, another thing, that's how I am and that's how I do things. That's how we do it. Learn to recognize when that's trauma speaking, you know. And one of the things, man, I put this up here because y'all know, if you know, I deal with these calls and these coaching calls, and I try to base it on your cosmology or your what we call the human design and, you know, astrology basically. And one of the things that I say is that I studied her cosmology before I studied her biology, which means that the cosmology or the movements of astrology deals with transitions in the mind and feelings and the emotions and one's psychological state. Like, there's a lot to learn, and I understand that everybody doesn't do this stuff, which is why I do my readings, to help people in this. But, you know, understanding who she is on a bigger picture before you get into her biology, which before you get into her body, like it just opens up. Because we need, you know, when I do my coaching and when I talk to men, like, and even when we're talking about trauma and counseling, you know, you have to have an approach that actually helps you get the results that you're looking for. Like, the approach of sleeping with these women prematurely is getting us nothing. On a large scale, as men, we're not getting better families. We're not getting more loyal children. We're not having any generational legacy. Doing things the way we've been doing things, entering into these sexual contracts with these women off some frivolous pursuits, it hasn't been working. So the approach needs to be changed. You know, it needs to be changed. You can map out her life. You can understand who she is by understanding her birth data, understanding her cosmology before you jump up in there. But the thing is, it depends on who you are. And when I say it depends on who you are, what I specifically mean by that is that if you are already sexually traumatized and you need to get some within a short period of time, or you don't even know how to court her, you don't even know what to look for, what to ask, you don't even know what to get to know her. All you know is the systematic things, what to say to get to the next level, to get the draws, right, to have sex with her, right? You know the sequential order of sleeping with this person, but you don't know the sequential order of finding her out, how she is and who she is. You don't, if you don't know that, you're going to be lost. You're going to be subject to all of the things that's within her character that you did not understand, that's in her history that you did not understand. Why? Because you got caught up. She, you know what I'm saying? She put it out there for you and you took it. And when you took it with a very small understanding of yourself and you shitted yourself out. You get what I'm saying? And you shouldn't, because no matter, like I said in the beginning, I showed you the pictures. The sexiest, most beautiful women that you think this and you think that about are the ones who are harboring the most trauma, all that sexuality that they're exuding. And even the ones that think, oh, it's nothing, I don't do that. Yeah, you do. Look at them pants. Every corner of your ass cheek is on display for everyone. And it's a huge ass. And you don't mind. Why? Because it makes you feel good. And being subjected to all of the harassment that you get, and you do it anyways because there's pleasure in it. So this is what our women are dealing with and our men are chasing, and we're not looking at it from the concept or the true perspective of it, which is, damn, why is she doing this? Like, You know what I'm saying? How do we like, how do we get there? Like, how do we get to this point where, you know, I'm over here chasing this woman because of how she looks and I don't fully understand who she is? It's because you didn't know yourself, man. It's because you did not know yourself. And as usual, guys, I got my cosmology calls that are still on sale. It is definitely based on your birth data. So, you know, even if you don't have your exact time, the time range, we could probably work with that, show you how everything aligns to show you who you are, you know, and understanding who you are is the first step to solving any kind of relationship issues that you have. Baby, no, go. Yes, I'm on the call. Go. You can get it. Sorry, guys. My daughter, like, she keeps coming here and doing all. I hope y'all not seeing her in there. But really understanding yourself in this level. I've done this coaching with a lot of men over the last couple of years, and I really want people to understand that you have this unconscious aspect of who you are that is being projected to people that ultimately, you know, you you not so conscious of, but they are. They're seeing it. They're seeing what you're doing, how you're doing, and it's a way that it's affected them that you're not aware of. So, a lot of us, we know what we want consciously, but we don't really fully understand that there are two sides of us. So in the human design based coaching that I do is really about learning your points and understanding the dominant energies that run through you, so that way you can know yourself. And then therefore, we move forward in comparing, showing you how you relate to people, like especially with the relationship readings that I've done before. We can show you exactly how you're relating to this person, show you exactly what energies inside of you attracted you to her, and show you exactly why perhaps you've been trauma bonded, what energies inside of your chart that are allowing for you to do this. Sometimes it's a part of how it goes. Sometimes you have to develop other aspects of yourself that aren't being developed just to move out of one stage. And I can't say that this is something that you do right away and you understand and you get right away, because studying yourself is a process. I mean, just think, if you're 35 years old and you really only getting into understanding and mastering yourself over the last couple of years, that's 30 something years of following, a way of life that really didn't serve you, that really didn't give you an opportunity to know yourself at a high level. That's a lot of deconditioning and retraining of your mind that you're going to have to do. So it's like, you know, you got to do that work. You got to get to that level. And if you don't get to that level, then the relationships, they're not going to last. Because how in the world you expect to be out here saving somebody, knowing somebody, loving somebody, but you're not doing that for yourself? It makes no sense. And as usual, guys, you can go on the website, heartandbreak.com, and click on the Work With Me tab where it says, cosmology coaching, and get one of those. Like I said, have your information together, know yourself, get this information. The coaching sessions, the full coaching sessions, they're about an hour long, and we go into a lot of stuff, but I can't say that it covers everything, because most of us have so much information about ourselves that we know and we don't know. It's really about learning how to use it. So what I've also been doing lately is bringing in the audio recordings, and it's like a purpose and destiny reading, where we go into how your purpose is like aligned astrologically, so that way you can learn how to move through it. It's not a full reading, but it's an audio recording that gets sent to you. It helps a lot, especially if you're at a stage in your life where you're looking just to shift. And then a lot of the guys who've had readings before, when you get to a certain age, your energy changes, you change, and you notice it first, but you're not understanding what's going on. They say it's maturity. Nah, it's usually you go into a second stage of, metaphysical development within yourself, usually between 28 and 30. And that goes into the 40s. And it's like a level of self-mastery that you have to learn that's completely different than, let's say, the first 20 or 30 years. I do those readings, those are called your Saturn return readings, help you understand stuff, especially if you're like 35, 40, 42, 43, and that energy is still pulsing. But the recordings, they come to you within 48 hours after you give me your birth information. You can go on heartandbreak.com underneath the menu, a Work With Me tab, and check that out. So as of right now, man, I appreciate you guys coming out. A lot of people are in relationship issues, consistently, and they don't understand, and they really don't understand because they are learning and have been taught that the traumatic things and the traumatic experiences are normal. And then you try to be normal with it, and the normal thing just doesn't work none whatsoever. And you're trying to figure out, how did I find myself in this situation? And the situation is pretty toxic. The pretty situation is not helping. It's not moving forward. You're not getting better. You're not getting the love you need. It's just a whole bunch of toxicity in the situation, and it's time to move forward. So, like, you move forward with knowledge of self. You don't move forward, by further immersing yourself into somebody else. You don't move forward that way. All it does is just get you stuck. And yes, sometimes when you have these bonds with women who have been through similar things as you, I do understand that there's this connection that happens. There's this feeling, especially in some cases. Let's say she's more healed than you are. You've been through the gauntlet yourself already, and now she's here to soothe you. There's some connections that you're feeling, and she's helping you, and you feel loved. But in reality, it's trauma bonding, and she's perhaps is not the love of your life, but the one that's going to help you move towards a direction of healing. Like, you got to be able to recognize these things. You got to be able to understand how they are attracting people to you, and then you got to be able to maneuver yourself to get out of them, or turn them into relationships that are healing relationships. Because as you can see with the slides before, the healing relationships are based on some authenticity. It's not based on pain, because the pain body is constantly reeling. It's like a vampire that's being, getting some sun. It's always screaming because of the things that's been done, like the transgressions that you received when this happened to you when you were 12, 5, or 13 or 15. These things that you try to put in the closet and act like didn't bother you, but bothered the hell out of you on several different levels. you know it's time for men in particular to really just move out of that stage and kind of understand. And like I said before, one of the biggest things is that when you are so accustomed to certain levels of trauma and you've made them normal, there's no way to heal. There's no way to heal when you think that really toxic behavior is normal, and it's tolerable, and there are no boundaries set against these things. When that happens, man, it's over. It's all toxic. It's all toxic. So, we just kind of learn from our mistakes if we can, and if we have an opportunity to grow, you grow. You grow by healing yourself, and like I said, specifically knowing yourself. So, and that's what I do with my cosmology sessions and the coaching sessions that I do. The goal is for you to specifically, you know, put in the work to get to know yourself. Stop spending and investing in things that don't give you a better understanding of who you are. And I feel as if it's hard for some men because we're so used to just going along with the system, taking care of everybody else but ourselves. So there's this lack of self-love that's there, that's kind of plaguing you, but you're not really realizing it, because your lack of self-love, you're channeling that energy as a hero. You're trying to do something for someone else, and at the same time you're being neglected, and to make it even worse, what, you're also being abused. And you're out here like literally accepting it when you shouldn't be accepting it. Like, that's trauma bonding. Healing relationships, actually, even though they don't necessarily are become relationships that last forever, because that's what everybody wants. Somebody, and especially a lot of men, you've been through a lot of shit, right? And then you think to yourself, oh, I'm not going to share it with somebody now. And now you're like, I told her what I've been through. And you feel this level of vulnerability. Sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes you should just deal with yourself, because that connection that you now start having with this person, it ain't based on nothing good. You don't have a good understanding of yourself. You're just running from one person to the next person, looking for somebody to soothe you and make you feel better about your trauma. So if you don't take an approach to really knowing yourself and understanding yourself, how do you expect to attract somebody different? Everything starts with knowing yourself, and everything starts with kind of sort of understanding the different levels of courtship, the different levels of functional relationships, because a lot of us just don't know. So yeah, man, for everybody in the Zoom call, we're about to open it up and terminate the Facebook Live at this moment, and get into the Zoom call. If people have any questions, just wanted to shoot it up, shoot a breeze, or whatever the case is. So we're jumping in there. If you're on Facebook watching, you can just click the link to join that. I appreciate you guys as usual. This is NAKADA, author of Heart on Break. You can get the book on Amazon. You can get it on my website, heartonbreak.com. My one-on-one coaching, cosmology coaching, is truly, truly transformational, to the point where if you study it and if you go over the audios that I furnish to you, you know, you can really, really, really use the strategy based in your own cosmology, in your birth data, to actually move you from where you are that doesn't work for you. You know, you've got to put yourself in a situation that actually does work for you and doesn't hurt. And, you know, it just doesn't happen haphazardly. Some people think that, oh, you know, I went through all these years and I finally find somebody. Nah, it's not really that you finally found somebody. It took you this damn long to learn this lesson, because nobody was telling you that this lesson was so important to learn. So you got hit by it. You got hit over and over and over by this information, thinking that it's some normal shit that is not normal. It's toxic, bro. You should have terminated that long ago. So yeah, we're going to terminate over here on Facebook. Appreciate you guys as usual. Like, share, comment, post, repost, whatever. You know, appreciate all the support that I get from you guys. Going to be doing more of these to get the audience back up, because it's been a long summer. So y'all take it easy over there, and we're going to switch over to the Zoom. Yes, sir. So yeah, man, if we ain't got no questions or anybody didn't want to say anything, we can definitely terminate the call. But if you wanted to, let's have it. What's going on, folks? You can unmute yourself, base. Let me see. How this thing go again, Spencer? I'm not hearing anything. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on with you, brother?
Man, I'm good. Who's this?
It's Jeremy.
Jeremy. Original Jeremy from year before last?
Yeah, me.
What's going on with your boss? How you been?
Nothing much, brother. Still same old, man. Still been following you. Still been, checking out your posts and reading all the knowledge that you're dropping.
Man, I appreciate that, man. How's everything with the situation?
Oh, man, like you said, man, just as the older I get, the wiser I get, man. And just forever, I'm starting to get a better understanding of a lot of the ways, why I was feeling and what I was feeling now. And
Yeah.
like this class right here actually, hit home. It's something that I have been realizing lately, like, man, we met at a very young age, like 15 and 16, and just clicked. And then of course it was that high sex drive, and that's what kind of just drove us through, I guess, like the first 10 years. And
wow.
Then we came on and got more serious about it. Now we looking back like, dang, we really got some issues that we should have dealt with on our own before we even got this far. So
yeah, so how are y'all working on them now in a different
actually,
way?
right. We definitely both been seeing counselors lately. And as of right now, we actually like are separated. Actually just came to that point to where it was kind of just getting out of hand. But we definitely are addressing the issue with ourselves, and then we just kind of deciding on where we're gonna go, from here. And I would definitely say the quarantine actually gave us enough time to actually finally sit still and notice, because before we were just running busy, just, just always doing something and never have time to just sit down and stop and think.
Right. Sometimes the busy is the way we avoid each other. You know what I'm saying?
Man, avoid ourselves.
Right. It's crazy because like for some people it's such a valid excuse. Like I got this to do, I got that to do, I didn't get a chance to, and all these different things, and next thing you know, boom, nothing gets
Facts.
solved in 10 years or however many years. I mean, it happens like that, but you've been working on it. You've been consciously working on it for a little while. And I know it doesn't happen overnight, but
Mm.
if you're conscious of it, it's a good start.
Yeah. I'll say I'm definitely in a more peaceful state than when I was last speaking to you. So I definitely got a better understanding of what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and even with her, kind of just communicating with her and getting her to understand certain things. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean the communication is the biggest part of it, I believe. Like,
Right.
yeah, because like, when complications arise, communication is the first thing that dies.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, and then we resort to the traumatic communication that we've learned. Even if we ain't learn it in our relationships, we learn it from our family members, we learn it from our brothers and our sisters, and we saw somebody just literally fight with each other just just to make it. It's kind of crazy.
Right.
It's kind of crazy, but if you're making progress, man, I gotta vote for you, man. I think y'all got a special thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's forever. And people got to be able to live with that. You got to really know what you want, especially since you're still young.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, man. Appreciate that, man. But I always appreciate your support, man. I'll be seeing you around.
All right. Yeah, man. Hey, I'm still gonna hit you up, man. Like I said, I got nothing but time, man. So I'm gonna be signing up for a couple of those calls, man, and catch up with you.
No doubt, brother. I appreciate you as usual, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, peace. Let me know if anybody else wanted to hop down. See a couple people still in here. Other than that, we're gonna sound off.